on YouTube now. And broadcasting. Okay, it is 6:30 Central Time, so we are going to start tonight's session, which is brought to you by the Schaumburg Township District Library. And this is the third session in our four-part series, Job Searching in a Post-Pandemic Market. Tonight's program is Maximize a Mobile Office and Produce Remotely. Presenter is Brie Reynolds from FlexJobs. Welcome, Brie.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Go ahead and share my screen there.
My name is Patty Smolin. To those of you that don't know me, I am the business reference librarian at the Schaumburg Library. And tonight's program, again, is the third part in a four-part series. All of our segments, the one that was done on the 3rd, the 10th tonight, and then the one also on the 20th, are available on, they're being live streamed to YouTube, and the recordings will be available for at least the next few weeks. Those of you that did register for tonight's session, handouts were shared, and we also, I do have some handouts from past sessions. If you'd like to get in touch with me directly, I'd be happy to share those with you. I'm going to put my name in the chat for those of you that do have any questions regarding the library. Go, studio.org, easy breezy. I'm also going to share it on YouTube, and I'll be fielding questions from both our Zoom forum and on YouTube. But I did want to mention tonight's session is very unique, and I was overwhelmed and so pleased when we were able to make it a part of this foursome, because many of us in the last 6 months have been asked to and have offered to work remotely, and it means new things to different people, and we want to do the best that we possibly can in what we're able to, and from our home offices or wherever we're constructing our workplaces to be. And I know that for me, balancing remote and also being present in the library, of course, I want to make the most out of the tools that I'm offered, and also the practices that I'm setting for myself, the accountability, communication styles that management, will set for us. And so it's really helpful to hear firsthand from someone like Brie in FlexJobs, who makes it an entire career to talk about how to bring the best of ourselves and be successful while working remotely. So again, really, really happy that you're here. I had the looking through your stats beforehand, and I'm just so glad that we're going to be spending the next hour going through all this content.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to be here myself. Can you hear me okay? I know I was a little choppy for a minute.
No, I think you're clear, crystal clear. And we're going to be receiving incoming questions in chat, and then periodically, Brie, if you just want to stop whenever, through the course of your segments, and ask for those questions, and I will just share them as they, as they're in, or you can wait to the end. It's whatever you think works best.
Sure. Yeah. We'll see how it goes and what questions are coming in, and we'll play it by ear. All right. Should I get started?
Yes, I think we're on target.
All right. Okay. Well, again, thank you for having me. Thank you everyone for being here. And I have to say, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I've been working remotely since 2009, excuse me. So over 10 years. And even working remotely right now has been a struggle for me, just like it has been for many people. And this is a very different way of working remotely. So I'm going to be addressing not only the process of finding a remote job, if you've decided that this is something that you're interested in, kind of what that job market looks like, but I will also be talking about how to do that well, things that we've learned, especially during the pandemic, but really always as remote workers, how to make that work for you, work for your coworkers, and for your boss, of course, and the organization or the company that you happen to be working for. Okay, so let me go ahead and get started here. So these are the topics that I'll be covering today. I'm going to speak very briefly about FlexJobs, just so you know my background and where I'm coming from. And then I'll dive right into what the remote job market looks like right now, including some of the things that we're seeing as a result of the pandemic. What does it actually look like in practice? And then I'll talk about best practices and tools for working remotely. And I would also encourage people to share their ideas as well. So if you've been working remotely during this time and you have some best practices that have worked for you or tools that you really like, please, of course, feel free to put that in the chat and share with each other. And then building networks and relationships remotely. So how do you kind of maintain the connections and build connections that you have in your working life when you are not physically with your coworkers? So just a little bit about FlexJobs. We're a job search service that specializes in remote work, hence why I'm talking about this. We were founded in 2007. That's where I got that date from in my brain. And since then, we've helped over 5 million job seekers find remote and flexible jobs. We are a membership site. So for job seekers, we have memberships where we pre-screen every job and company on the site, but we also offer a lot of publicly available resources. So you don't have to be a member to take advantage of what there is at FlexJobs. So I would definitely recommend you check out all of the free resources that we have, including lots of articles and webinars and things that we host to help people find remote jobs, be good remote workers, and do everything in between. And I am the career development manager at FlexJobs. I'm a career coach by trade, and I've been doing that for about 15 years now, 10 of which at FlexJobs. And this is my career coaching team. So we have a lot of great people on staff who love to do this and help people find remote jobs and then also excel at remote work. So let's talk about some current trends, what's actually happening in the remote job market right now. We are actually seeing an increase overall in remote job listings since the pandemic began. Each comparison, every time we look at, another month wrapped up compared to the month before it, we see another increase. And actually the largest increase just happened in July. There was a 20% increase in remote job listings over June. And so we really are seeing employers, I think, get to the point where they've realized that remote work can work. And even in the middle of a very uncertain and far less than ideal situation, such as the pandemic, people can still be productive and effective when working remotely and also report higher job satisfaction, more control over their lives. They're better able to balance all of the things they might have going on outside of work. So employers are also seeing that this is really a benefit to them and to their employees. And so they're starting to add more remote listings. We're seeing lots of surveys showing that companies are going to continue offering remote work even after the pandemic is over. And also because it's difficult to tell when the pandemic may actually end, we are seeing this ongoing remote work hiring right now. Even for jobs that may go back into the office once the pandemic is over, they're looking at remote work still to hire for those positions because offices are just simply not ready to open yet for a lot of companies. And then we are also seeing a big increase in the number of people who are searching for remote jobs. So it's been about a 50% increase year over year, looking at 2020 versus 2019. And that's a big jump. So that's definitely means that if you're out there looking for remote work, there's more competition, of course. But I'm going to talk about some of the things that you can do that might set yourself apart as you are looking for those jobs, and also how to be a great worker once you're on the job or if you're currently working remotely. So when we look at the top career fields for remote work, these are the ones that we're seeing right now. And this tends to be the same always. Outside of the pandemic, we saw a very similar list. Sometimes this top 10 fluctuates. So, customer service may go up and down, sales may go up and down, but overall, the top 10 seems to be these 10 types of positions. So computer and IT, I think that's probably no surprise that that's number one. Interestingly, medical and health is often up towards the top, either number one or two. Right now, it's dropped down a little bit. We've seen sales and project management increase, but this fluctuates month to month, and it fluctuates depending on the time of year as well. Accounting and finance is one that we see go up and down a lot, depending on whether it's tax season or not. Education and training has also increased over the last few months because, as many of you may have experienced, education is moving online. And so that's one where we're continuing to watch that to see what happens. But overall, these across the years have really been the top career fields for remote jobs. So if you are in one of these fields, it's a good bet that you'll be able to find something that allows you to work remotely. If not, there are many other career fields that allow remote work. We took a look at this top 10 out of 55 career fields that we track at FlexJobs. So there are many other fields that would allow for remote work, but these tend to be the top ones. And then as far as the specific jobs that you can do within those career fields, these are the top 20 that we tend to see over and over again. So accountant is often on top, and program manager, teacher and faculty, writer. I mean, you can read the whole list here, so I won't read the whole thing, but this fluctuates a little bit over time, but again, tends to stay basically the same top 20. We have seen a surge in recent years in project management, engineering jobs, and engineering jobs in this case are not computer related engineering. We actually classify those under software developer, web engineer, those sorts of things. We also see that more traditional engineering fields, mechanical, civil, those sorts of things actually offer remote opportunities. So I like to clarify that, because I think it's one of those fields that people don't necessarily think could be done remotely, but it certainly can, along with nursing and other things. I think we're all starting to experience what telehealth is like, and that they do hire lots of nurses and doctors to do that type of work. So the main lesson when I'm talking about these job titles and career fields is really just to keep your mind open, keep the idea of what can be done remotely open a little bit, because most people are surprised at the variety of remote jobs that are out there. And even if the type of job that you're doing right now may not be compatible with remote work, there are lots of things that are. So the opportunities are definitely out there. And then I just also like to show a slide of the top companies that hire for remote jobs. This says flexible jobs, but we kind of use flexible and remote interchangeably a little bit. And so these are some of the more well-known companies that we see that have a track record of hiring remotely year after year after year. And as you can see, these are a lot of traditional jobs that tend to have lots of offices as well, but they are also hiring for remote work. And we've seen that increase this year, especially. But as you can see, there's a huge variety. It matches the career fields that we see. It matches the types of jobs that we see. There's education, there's healthcare, there's high tech, those sorts of things. And so you can see that there is also with companies a wide variety. Now, I like to choose big names for this because obviously most people have heard of at least some of these. That kind of rings a bell and makes you think, oh, okay, companies that I didn't realize were offering remote work actually are. But I don't want to discount the small and medium-sized businesses that we also see hiring for remote jobs, because there's really a huge variety out there. So doing your research is a good idea. So where could you actually do that research? I wanted to make sure I included some additional sites that you can use to find remote work. So like I said, FlexJobs has some job listings that you can see, but also a lot of free resources to just support your job search. You know, we have lots of advice on resumes and cover letters and interviewing, all geared towards remote work. But there are some really good lists out there of specialty job search sites that work for remote work in particular. So Skill Crush is a website that offers, I believe, online training for web development and other technical types of fields. They put out a list every year of the 25 best sites for finding remote work. If you were to Google this one or any of the lists that are mentioned here, you would find them pretty easily. They're pretty easy to find. If you did Skill Crush, best sites for finding remote work. Proven has a list of the 100 plus job boards for job seekers and recruiters. It's organized by industry. The reason that I wanted to point this one out is because when you focus on job boards that have some kind of specialty, whether it's remote work or the type of industry or career field or location, you get smaller amounts of job listings, but usually they're much more applicable to what you're looking for. When you go to a really large job board, Sometimes you get overwhelmed by the number of job listings that are there, and you spend a lot of time sifting through and filtering and running searches to pinpoint the types of jobs that you're actually interested in, which is not the best use of your time as a job seeker. So if you go to some of these smaller boards on these lists, you're going to spend less time doing that kind of sifting and filtering and more time actually hopefully spending good time on your applications and writing great cover letters and all those sorts of things. Ryan Robinson also has a list of the 72 best freelance job websites to get remote freelance work fast. And so that one's organized by job type, and it's specialized in remote work and freelance work in particular. I know right now lots of people are looking for potentially side gigs as well, or freelancing as a way back into the job market. So I wanted to mention that. I would also definitely recommend you go to any industry or professional associations in your career field. They often have job listings on their site, and there's also the networking component, which is a really important piece in any job search, even a remote one, is to connect with other people. And so that's also why I recommend the last one, talking to your friends, your family in a socially distanced way, of course, your neighbors, your professional network, just to talk about your job search if you are looking or if you're interested and maybe thinking about it. How did they get their last job? Or if they're job searching right now, what's working for them? Where have they found to be effective and helpful if they're searching online? Talking to people about your job search can be a really helpful tool to learn what they've learned, to share resources, and to hopefully push yourself forward. Okay, so let's talk about some of the best practices and tools for remote work in particular. So when we talk to employers who have remote jobs, who hire lots of remote workers, they often give us the skills that they're looking for outside of somebody's ability to actually do the job that tells them that they're going to be a capable remote worker. Those skills are almost always, the list that they give us almost always begins with written and verbal communication. They really look for people who can communicate well and clearly, both in writing and verbally. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a video conference like this, but on the phone or a web conference, just anytime that you're actually talking, that's what they mean by verbal. And then writing, there's email, there's instant messaging, when you're sharing documents, all of those sorts of things. They really look for people who do really well in writing. There is actually one remote company whose name escapes me right now, but they do their interviewing strictly through an instant messaging program, like an online chat program where you're typing your interview answers and you're getting questions that way. And they do that because that's how their team communicates most of the time. And they want to make sure that whoever they're hiring is able to communicate really well that way. So you'll find some remote companies are really, focused on communication in particular. And then time and task management always comes up. Being able to focus yourself, keep yourself productive, stay on top of yourself when you're having a day where you might not feel very productive, but you need to be. I'll always say that working from home to this day, I've been doing it for 10 years, or I've been working from home for 11 years now, 10 years with FlexJobs. The laundry is still a distraction for me. If I have a project coming up that I'm nervous about, or I'm, don't really want to get into, I'm trying to put it off. If I'm avoiding it, I will look to see if my laundry basket needs emptying and if there's some laundry that needs to be done. So you have to know where your kind of your pitfalls might be, what might distract you around your house, and be able to manage yourself around that. And sometimes I will go and let myself throw in a load of laundry for 5 minutes just to shake off that energy, get refocused, and come back to my desk. But it's knowing yourself and how to manage yourself that is really the key piece. Proactive questioning is also something that comes up a lot. And it's really the ability to speak up for yourself when you are not clear about something, or you need more information, or you just want to double check that you are on the right path with a project, or you need help, you need somebody's support. In a remote environment, it's very difficult to see when you are struggling. So, when you're in the office, the manager can take a look at you really quickly and notice if you look bored or frustrated or nervous, and kind of get a sense of what you might be going through at that moment. In a remote environment, that simply doesn't happen unless you're on video chat all day, which is not a great way to have a remote team operating, I'll tell you that. So you have to be able to speak up for yourself in those moments when you need help, when you're feeling frustrated or uncertain or whatever it might be, and ask your manager or your coworkers for that next thing that's going to get you moving, or the piece of information you're missing, whatever it might be that you need. Being comfortable with technology is definitely a big piece of remote work. and troubleshooting your technology. So when you have an error come up on your computer or your Wi-Fi goes out, those sorts of things, you don't necessarily have to know the answer immediately, but you have to know the steps you can take to start troubleshooting and potentially get yourself to an answer. So is it unplugging your modem? Is it restarting your computer? Those little things. And then also being comfortable with technology in terms of the tools that you're using as a remote worker, which I'll talk about on the next slide. And overall, a growth mindset is really helpful with remote work because, especially in a pandemic, everything is changing. And you have to be able to embrace that change, to learn from it, and to adapt really quickly so that you can kind of keep going forward, keep progressing in your job. And having a growth mindset is going to help with that a lot. And then I mentioned communication tools, which is the next slide. So these are the most common remote work tools. We've surveyed, I think it's over 140 companies now that operate mostly or completely remotely, meaning they have either a small office or no office at all, and most of their employees work from their homes, to see how do you actually do that? What tools are you using to kind of build the infrastructure of your company when you're not working face to face? Now, many of these are tools that you may have used in office jobs as well. They're not necessarily strictly speaking for remote work. It's just that they're very common. The programs that are used: GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, Skype, Join Me, Google Hangouts. And then file sharing and document collaboration also are some of the things where you're sharing files back and forth. Google Drive, Dropbox, and Microsoft OneDrive. Those are kind of the big ones. Virtual office environments. These include things like Yammer, Sococo, and Microsoft Teams. They are really just to bring teams together in one place and allow you to have almost an office environment recreated, but in a virtual way. So my homework for anybody who is interested is to pick out a few of these that you're not yet familiar with and go get the free versions and start learning them. The nice thing is with these remote tools, most of them have a free version or a free trial that you can use, and it's going to help you train up to be a better remote worker. But also, if you are in a job search or you're planning to start one and looking for remote jobs in particular, you can actually make a technology section on your resume that talks about all of the programs that you know that would allow you to be a great remote worker. And so you would list things like video conferencing and then have, Zoom, Skype, Join Me, whichever ones you're familiar with. And having that listed out can actually help you because, as I said, there's been a huge influx, 50% increase in the number of people looking for remote jobs. However, most people are not going to really tailor their resumes in that way towards remote work, showcasing the technology that they have and that sort of thing. So it's really important to do that to make yourself stand out. It's a very easy way to do it. So if you like homework and you want something to do after this, check out some of these the free versions of these programs and start learning them. Do some training, watch some YouTube tutorial videos. A lot of these platforms have their own tutorials that are really helpful. And you'll find that in no time at all, you'll start picking these up at least at a basic level, and then you can put them on your resume. Okay, so a little bit of last information, and then I think I'll take a pause before the next section and we can answer some questions. For gear and equipment, when you are working remotely, you want to make sure that you're getting what you truly need and not getting too distracted by some of the really fun but maybe unnecessary gadgets that are out there. There are lots of different tools and equipment that you could use to work remotely, but what do you actually need? When we survey remote workers, myself included, I tend to agree with most of these. They talk about having an external monitor. So you see me looking back and forth because I've got one monitor here and I've got a second monitor over here. That really helps, especially when you're doing things like this, where you're on a video call, but you also have your screen going. Just want to be multiple things at a time, especially if others are going to be on a very small laptop screen, can really help your eyes, your posture, everything. A full keyboard and mouse is also really comfortable. It allows you to be ergonomically correct with your hands. And that full mouse also helps with that instead of using like the trackpad on your laptop. Headphones can also be really helpful. You don't have to get anything too fancy, but noise canceling can be especially helpful if you have a house full of family members or roommates during this pandemic, which I definitely have. It just helps people be able to hear you better and cut out some of that background noise. And these just came with my smartphone. So they're very simple headphones, but they do tend to cut out some of the background noise and just make things clearer when I'm talking on a call. Some remote jobs and remote companies do require that you have wired internet. So that's something to look at in the job descriptions. Most of them will say that they have that requirement before you even apply, because they want to make sure people can actually meet that requirement. So that's just something to keep in mind. And that just means you're plugging into your internet instead of using Wi-Fi. And that's really to maintain a stable connection. This is especially common with customer service and also sales jobs. If you're going to be on the phone a lot or on online chat a lot with potential customers or current customers, the worst thing in the world would be if that cut out and you weren't able to actually continue the conversation. It's frustrating for everyone involved. So that tends to be why they would ask for that. The one thing I will say, and this goes for people who are working remotely right now, more companies now are offering stipends to help equip people in their home offices. So I would say, first of all, inquire at work if there is some kind of stipend or reimbursement available for certain things. And you could mention, my posture has been really bad since I started working from home. Is it possible I could purchase an office chair that would allow me to be more comfortable and have better posture? Those sorts of accommodations, oftentimes companies will allow for that. Or for your monitor, you just want to make sure that you have a good case as to why you would need that equipment. And generally it comes down to your comfort and your health because of that. Having better posture is better for you overall. And you don't want to be damaging your health in any way by not having those ergonomic features. And also for things like noise canceling headphones or something like that, of course, it's going to make you better at your job if you're able to communicate better with your coworkers, with your customers, whoever it might be. So having a little bit of an idea of why that would be helpful, it can work as well. And if they don't offer a stipend, then that's something that you'll have to cover on your own. So I would look towards any, deals, discounts, things that you can get, and really what are the critical pieces that you would need to really be more comfortable. Okay, so before we get into best practices, Patty, are there any questions coming in? Looks like there might be one from Leslie here in the Q&A that I could answer.
Yes, there is one. Are you able to see it?
I can, yep.
Okay.
So Leslie asks, if I'm interested in entering a new field in the remote work environment where I don't have a specific, where I don't have specific experience or education, what do you recommend? This is a great question. So for any other career changers or potential career changers on the call, this is a good one for you guys as well. So the first thing is to think about, for any career change, whether it's remote or otherwise, is there anything that you've done in your past where the types of skills that you used would be a good fit for your future jobs? So if you already know the field that you want to change into, you have to think about what are the skills that are going to make you really successful in that field or make you a good job seeker in that field. What skills are in demand? And you can find that out pretty easily by going to job listings and things like that. And then compare that to your own previous experience. So we're looking, actually, I'll go back to that slide that was all about those transferable skills. Transferable skills are skills where you can take them from one job and use them in another job, even if they don't seem totally related. So that's where you want to start, is where are your baseline skills that would transfer over. The other thing you can think about is if you have any remote experience, even if it's not in the same career field, you should be mentioning that in your resumes and your cover letters as well. You've worked remotely before, you're comfortable with it. For anybody who's worked remotely in this pandemic, that's definitely something that you can add to your resumes, remote since March 2020 or 100% remote since the pandemic began, those sorts of things. So start with your transferable skills, what matches there. And then there is also the retraining and upskilling, as it's sometimes called, route, where if there are certain things that you're lacking in that new field that are critical, that you truly do not have, and there's no way to kind of transfer certain skills to match those types of new skills, then you're going to look at upskilling and retraining. But the first thing I would do is look at how much of that you actually need, because there's huge levels. Is it tutorials online? Is it some sort of small course that you could take online? Is it a certification that you need? Very rarely does an entirely new degree come into play. But I think a lot of people jump to that conclusion and think, oh, I have to get, a new bachelor's degree in this, or I should go for my MBA. Sometimes that can help. But before you make that big investment, which it usually is a pretty big investment in time and money, think about, is that truly necessary? And one thing that can actually help a lot is by seeking out people who are in your new field and asking them, what do they really think are the most necessary things, and how can you get those skills or those experiences? Would they recommend a new degree, or is there some sort of online training they've seen, that kind of thing. And also joining professional associations in that new field can help as well. Okay.
We have another question, if you could take it. This is from
Sure.
Joe. He says, I heard that Google has authorized workers to work remotely until next summer. The rumor was they were going to try and be a more remote workforce, but they are adjusting salaries based on the location of the worker. Do you think this will be a trend?
Yes, the answer is yes. It's already a trend, actually. This is very common with remote work, and has been since I've been studying remote work. Remote companies tend to set salaries in a couple different ways. So one is based on where the remote company is based. So for Google, it would be California, and they would look at the geographic range for California. However, because a lot of remote jobs now can be done from multiple places far outside of that small geographic range where they might have began, a lot of companies now are setting those salaries based on the location of wherever the worker will be. So for example, if you are in the California area, maybe working for Google or someplace else, and you're making a very high salary because it's a high salary area, and then you move to an area that's a much lower cost of living, they're going to adjust those salaries accordingly. However, it's usually not a very steep drop off, although it really depends on the company. It depends on what their policy is and how true they are to the exact geographic match. So it can be a drop, but usually not a huge drop, if that makes sense. But yes, this is very common with remote work. So if you're wondering, let's say you were working remotely and you wanted to move around and move someplace else, maybe find a place that's a lower cost of living, I would also do some research into what the salary levels are for your type of job in that area. And you can use a site like payscale.com or salary.com. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. That's the obvious one.
I think that Brie has, unfortunately, there's a pause in her connection. So we're going to try to bring her back. If you could just bear with me for a moment. And we are still having some trouble getting Brie back in, but I am determined to make this happen. So again, if you could just give me a few moments, stretch your legs, and I'll be back momentarily. Thanks.
Hi there, this is Brie.
You're
I'm
back
back.
in?
Yes, so sorry about that. Just
Okay,
we were
great.
talking
No, we
about
were just, things do happen. No, I was just getting you on your phone, but we'll just continue as we were.
All right,
This is
sorry
just
about
how
that.
things happen. Everybody just took a
Yes.
short little break.
And this is how you know you have to troubleshoot your how you have to be a good technology savvy person to work remotely and troubleshoot all your fun errors. Okay, so let me get the PowerPoint back up here and
We
play.
did have one more question. I don't know
Oh,
if you were
sure.
continuing on that Google question, or if that
No,
was
that
wrapped
was,
up.
yep,
And we have one that's coming from our friends in YouTube. Let me just grab that really fast.
sure.
We have someone who's asking, what about an hourly reimbursement for internet access, cell phone usage, printers, etc.?
Some
That would be the
companies will,
stipend.
yeah, some companies will do that also, and they'll usually look at it as a percentage of your overall use. And so you would say, okay, I work 8 hours a day. That's X percentage of hours each day that are used for work. And so they may do that accordingly. Sometimes they'll give you just a general stipend, and then some companies don't reimburse at all. Unfortunately, no universal rules that apply to that sort of thing. There used to be some home office tax incentives and things like that. But if you're an employee now instead of a freelancer, those no longer exist, unfortunately.
Okay,
Okay.
we are current with questions if you want to take it from the next slide.
Okay. All right. And thanks for hanging with me. Okay. So let's talk about some best practices. So one of the first things that I like to discuss with remote work in terms of making sure you're a good remote worker and taking care of yourself is watching out for isolation and overwork. Usually when we talk to remote workers or we survey them, they will say that these are the two things they come up against in terms of challenges when they're working remotely. So isolation being that feeling that most of the day, and physically alone, as well as maybe you're not communicating with people even online as much. Some very communicative online. They're sending messages back and forth or emails, or they have regular meetings. Other teams are very independent and hands off, and they don't do a lot of that. So that's something to just inquire about either when you are working remotely, if you're already doing that, or during the job search process. You can even ask, how does this team communicate on a daily basis? What are the expectations? What are the norms? And just ask what that looks like on the team. And then overwork is the other thing where, because your work is at home, you can do it anytime. And so sometimes people tend to do it all the time. And that is something that you also want to get clear on what the expectations are with your manager, with your coworkers, because I think a lot of this comes from a nervousness that you will be seen as not working. And so if you can get clear on what is actually expected, and also be clear with your manager and your coworkers within those parameters of what's expected, what will that look like for you? What will your hours tend to be? How will they know where they can find you? If something happens outside of hours when you're not working, but it's an emergency, what's the best way to reach you? Really just coming by step expectations and norms for yourself. Know when you're going to be working, what to expect, that sort of thing. That can be really helpful as well. And then video calls. I always recommend video calls, using them occasionally because it is nice to get face to face with your coworkers once in a while, but not constantly. And many of you may have experienced Zoom fatigue. It's a very real thing. One of the examples that I give is I have a friend who is on video calls most of the day, and his team, they just sort of set up a video call and have it going throughout the day while they are working. That is invasive to a point. You want to be able to see your coworkers, but also have that privacy that you might be used to. It gets to feel overwhelming to be on a video call that often. So I would definitely recommend using them sparingly, getting to know your coworkers that way, having that face-to-face interaction, maybe once or twice a week, or a little bit more than that if you'd like, really not much more than that. And don't assume that just because you're working remotely, something has to be on video. I know whenever I get a Zoom call or a Zoom meeting invite, I always try to ask ahead of time, is this going to be an audio call or also video? Also, so I'm not surprised and I can prepare to look ready for a video call. Also, this just goes back to keeping yourself on task and being your own best manager. Use lists and time management tools. Figure out what might work best for you, what programs or tools or methods you like to work with in terms of time management, and build yourself a structure for that so that you know what you're supposed to be doing and when, and you also feel that sense of accomplishment when you're getting things done. The other thing is being a good self-manager and taking breaks. So going back to overwork, this often comes up. You want to make sure you're building breaks into your day, because when you are working alone and there aren't distractions, you get really focused, which can be very helpful. That's one of the main reasons that people are more productive in a remote environment, is because they aren't as distracted as when they're in the office. They're not interrupted as much. They don't have impromptu meetings. They're not side railed by somebody else's quick question as they're walking past your cubicle. But also because of that, you have a lot of time to focus. And so you can get really down into something and not realize how much time is going by before you've actually stood up and stretched and maybe gone for a little walk or whatever it might be. So make sure that you're building in breaks to your day as well. I can't say it enough. Communicate is the other thing that really goes with remote work. One of the things that has come up since the pandemic is this Grow with Google initiative for remote work specifically. So if you go to grow.google/remote work, you will find a whole thing that they've put together on helping people build the skills and the abilities to work remotely. And it's a really helpful tool, whether you've been working from home for a while or this is brand new to you. It can really help you understand how to make the most of this particular situation. That's a really good, useful tool there. Okay, so the last thing I want to touch on is building remote relationships and networks. And then we'll go to some more questions. So the first thing is really expectation setting. I know I talk about that a lot, including communication, but expectation setting is important for making sure that you are living up to your manager's expectations, that you are meeting their expectations and your coworkers, but also that you have a really firm understanding of what you should be doing every day, how to get in touch with people, how to show that you are doing the work and are productive and efficient and engaged. So talking to your team about whatever new reality you might be going through is really important. At FlexJobs on my coaching team, we just hired some new coaches to the team. And one of the things we discussed is, at home, what are some of the things that you have going on? If there are obstacles, if you have kids at home or roommates or whatever it might be, just so we all know. So my team knows that I have 2 kids at home and that I may be interrupted with the kids walking in, and I'll be able to handle that and get right back to them. They know when I'm in and out because my husband and I split shifts during the day for childcare and work. And so they know when dad is on versus when I am on. And my coworkers know when I'm going to be out of the office, so to speak, because I'm going to be with my kids. They also know how to get in touch with me if something crazy happens and they need to pull me back in. So setting those expectations, letting people know what's going on at home and really just what your workday is going to be like can be really helpful. Also shifting priorities at work. If it's possible, if you need to shift some things around to make your work more manageable in a remote work setting or because of the pandemic, whatever it might be, it's important to have those discussions as well. And then really talking about how flexible your hours can be. This is one distinction that needs to be made with remote work, is just because you're working from home doesn't mean you necessarily have flexible hours. Some companies do offer flexible hours where you're kind of setting your own schedule and you can come and go as long as you're meeting, 40 hours a week or whatever the expectation is. But some companies have strict hours when you're working remotely. My first remote job before FlexJobs was a 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern remote job. And that was it. And you got a certain lunchtime and a couple breaks, and they were very clear about that. Whereas with other companies, they leave it up to you when those particular hours will be. They might have core hours where everybody needs to be working between, say, 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. So you're all online together. But outside of that, you can shift the other 4 hours of your day to be when you can do them. So talking about that, being open and honest with what are those expectations, how flexible can your hours be, and how do you relay if you're going to be changing your hours, if they are flexible, who needs to know and how should they be told? And the best ways to reach you if you're offline in the event of an emergency. And I think that's important to stress also when you are giving your coworkers that information, that it should be for urgent things only. If it's something that can wait a few hours, that should also be conveyed in the message. And you should give people that courtesy as well, but also asking for that courtesy is important. And then regular communication. So when we're talking about communication, you want to talk to your team about who needs to know what, when, where, and how. So for example, at FlexJobs, we use Slack, which is that instant messaging or online chat program for casual conversation throughout the day. The coaches are talking, we're sharing ideas, talking about, things we have going on that day, and it's very casual. We also have a weekly meeting, which is a sort of business meeting where we talk about what's going on at work. But then we also have a weekly meeting that is a coffee talk meeting where we're just talking about our lives outside of work. And we made the times for, so we know no matter what goes on the rest of the week, we're always going to have time to do those two things. And who needs to be involved in those sorts of things and how. There is also a lot of talk now about synchronous versus asynchronous communication. So that's important to get clear on with your team. And that has to do with whether you're working together at the same time, synchronous, or if you're working at different times on the same projects or even on different projects, that's asynchronous. It really has to do with, are you at the same time working with your coworkers or not? So really, the main thing is to bring up these conversations if they're not being had at your workplace already and you're curious about them and things are a little confusing and you want some clarity. Absolutely ask your manager to talk for a little bit about what the expectations are, and you can couch it in the idea that you're trying to be, a good, productive, engaged remote worker, and you just want to make sure that you're meeting their expectations. At the same time, you're going to be making sure that they understand the expectations that you have as well. And then if you are applying for remote jobs, the job interview is a great time to ask about this. It not only will give you some really valuable information about the team that you may be going to work for, but it also shows that company that you're being really thoughtful about remote work and what it looks like in this particular job and how you can be a part of that in a healthy and productive way. So it works both ways for the job interview. Okay, so I do have some conversation starters. I know everybody likes scripts, especially when you're having a difficult conversation. Sometimes it's easy to have a sense of what you could say ahead of time. So the first one is to talk with your boss or coworkers. You can start it with, I want to share my current reality to give everyone a good understanding and try to stay ahead of any potential problems. Again, you're not just doing it to vent and say, oh my goodness, with my kids home, or my parents aren't behaving, or whatever it might be. You want to say, this is a work-related conversation, and here's why. If you're asking for more flexibility, you could say something like, I'd like to get a good sense of what my flexible work options are right now. The more I'm able to shift my schedule, the better I'll be able to meet work priorities and stay productive during this time. And of course, change this into the way you speak. This is just kind of formal business talk, but you can change this to sound like you. And then for the beginning of meetings, you could say something like, as is the case with a lot of you, I'm working from home and caring for my blank and blank year old kids. I wanted to give you a heads up that I may get interrupted during our call, but I'll let you know. I'll mute myself, I'll deal with the situation, and I'll jump back in. So they understand that if one of their kids bursts through the door during a meeting, just to give them a couple minutes to get that settled, and that you'll be popping back in. And they don't have to worry, is she coming back? What's happening? Are we going to see him again? You can set the tone ahead of time that this may happen, but I'm going to deal with it and I'll pop back in. Or again, it's just a lot of communication and expectation setting in a remote environment. That is for sure. Okay, so I think this is the last thing that I'm going to share before more questions. We designed this quarantine update to your boss template, where it's basically just a way to email your boss on a regular, maybe once a week, a regular interval, maybe a couple times a week, to let them know what's going on at work and in life, the progress that you're making. That's one of the things I haven't stressed enough, I think, in this presentation, is that as a remote worker, you're also a lot of times responsible for patting your own back and being your own cheerleader at work and showing people what you're doing and how you're being productive and making an impact at the company. And so this is one of those ways that you can do that. It feels a little awkward at first because in a regular work environment, you may not be necessary to do this as much, but in a remote environment, sometimes it's difficult to tell who's doing what and when and how great they're doing with it. So this is one of those ways where you can do that a little bit. So you see, there's just telling this person, I wanted to share a few updates with you related to COVID and work this week. Let me know if you have any questions. So there's an expectation there that, there's no huge response necessary, but if anything brings up questions for you, let me know. So there's the life and work section where you talk about maybe your shifting work schedule for different days. For urgent things, you can reach me here. My child's school has announced 100% remote learning. We're working on what that schedule will look like. More to come on that. Just kind of what's going on in life that may eventually impact work in one way or another. And then your priority tasks and projects for the week with the things that you're really working on. And you could also ask your manager, what would you like to see in this update? What would be most helpful for you to know about me on a weekly or biweekly basis? And then a progress and wins category. So this can be where, if you nailed a good client or you gave a really good presentation, something like that, you would put that in here, just to let them know the things that you are accomplishing and give yourself that cheerleader moment, that you are doing some good work. So that's it. It can be a really simple template just to keep people on. And you might also develop something like this for your coworkers as well. If you have people that you really closely work with, it might be helpful for them to get something like this, and also inspire them to do the same thing. Okay, so I'm happy to answer any more questions as they come in.
Okay, so we do have a couple of comments that are coming from our YouTube viewers, and I just want to share those with those on Zoom as well. There was a discussion after the hourly reimbursement for various items, and then one individual came forward with some great tips. She said, I've worked remote for the last 5 years. My tip is set hours, take lunch breaks, and log off when your hours are done for the day. And then another person wrote in, what time management tools do you recommend? And the reply back, this was a nice exchange. Toggle, Toggl. Toggle lets you track time spent on specific tasks. Asana is great for project management, as is Trello. Asana to me it reminds me of yoga poses. So that I'm admittedly not familiar with Asana, but now it makes me want to inquire to what it is. So that was just a conversation. I wanted to share those tips from those on YouTube with our Zoom registrants.
Yeah, those are great tips. I love Toggle and Asana. I haven't used either one of them a lot, but I'm familiar with both and they're great tools. And then even, a simple Google Doc with a to-do list is always helpful as well. And one other that I heard of that's a very simple thing is the Pomodoro technique, which I'm sure some people are familiar with. It's where essentially it's working in 25-minute increments with 5-minute breaks in between. So you focus yourself for 25 minutes, your head's down working on a project, a timer goes off, and it's called Pomodoro because the timer that was used was tomato shaped. So Pomodoro technique, but you could use any timer on your phone or whatever, set it for 25 minutes. And when that 25 minutes goes off, you get up for 5 minutes, you stretch, you maybe do some yoga poses, whatever you would like, and then you get back into it. And it just kind of helps you focus and stay on task. But I can't stress enough, taking breaks and ending work when you're done. And it might even be shutting off the notifications on your phone so that you don't hear anything about email and all that sort of stuff, until you go back to work the next day. That can be really helpful just to totally detach.
My tool is not nearly as sophisticated or tech-based. I have some playlists that I love to work with music. That is the way. I'm kind of a whistle while you work kind of person. And when I get to the end of my playlist, that is an indication for me to step up, stretch my legs, and walk away. When the
Oh, I
music is
love that.
over, yeah, I'm in sync. When the music is playing, I am working, but it's almost like musical chairs. When it stops, I have to do the reverse and get up and step away for about 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think using sound in your home office can be really helpful, either for music to kind of keep you focused, the type of music that you're playing to get you energized or calm you down, whatever you might need. And there's a lot of instrumental channels too on things like Spotify and Pandora, and even YouTube has lots of videos that are just kind of, hours long, instrumental types of music that help you without the wording. That's one thing for me. I can't work with lyrical music, anything that has lyrics in it. I just get distracted by whatever is being sung in the song. So if it's instrumental, I'm good to go. And if it's got lyrics in it, I can't focus. So that's another thing. One thing I did start listening to recently is a YouTube channel, and there's a bunch of these, but it is coffee shop sounds. And it's like 11 hours or something ridiculous of just sounds of a coffee shop. And I used to love working out of coffee shops for a couple hours here and there, during the week. And now that I can't do that, I'm kind of recreating it in my home office with this YouTube channel. But it is actually really comforting to have that noise in the background, kind of helps that isolation go away a little bit.
I do want to say special thanks for mentioning the Grow with Google effort that you had provided that link, because it is because of the Grow with Google sponsorship and that grant that was offered through PLA, the Public Library Association, that this 4-part series took flight.
Oh, yes, that's right.
That was offered earlier this spring. and my department director had approached me with it, and we put something together, and you are a part of it. So Grow with Google grows with the library.
There
And
you
we're
go.
really pleased that they made that connection and approved us for moving forward with this. Um, you had talked a lot about expectation, and I think that was a challenge in the beginning because no one knew what the expectation was going to be for how long were we going to be working, so I think in addition to all of the pieces of equipment and tech tools, one of the greatest assets that I know that impacted my remote work setup and other colleagues was the support that we received, from management, our directors, and across the board. And I'm sure many other organizations had to consider if they had a telework policy set up, and if not, what the guidelines were going to be, so
Hmm.
that there was an accountability, there was a communication style, and it was kind of put together as we go. But I'm interested to know how others were able to manage. I'm pleased that the library was able to make that work back from, I think, back 5 months ago, when we were all close in that mid state. But how many other clients do you have that had to come up with policies? I don't want to say on the fly, I'm sure some thought was put into it, but had to kind of take templates from others to make sure that they were adhering to the best policies for their business.
Yeah, a lot. There definitely been a lot. It's interesting because even companies where remote work was common, where people could work from home on occasion, or maybe there was a regular, Fridays are remote or Wednesdays are remote or whatever it might be, there was very little policy put around that other than, okay, Fridays are remote Fridays now. And so what we've seen, it's something like only 3% of companies, this was a couple of years ago, the survey came out, but only 3% of companies actually track the ROI and process of their remote work programs. And they're very ad hoc. It's like 60% of managers have control over whether or not their individual teams can work remotely at all. And so that's within a company. You might have teams with different policies. And no one central company policy. So I think that's one thing we've seen is companies really adapting quickly, I should say, and building up policies either company wide or giving directives, because it does make sense in some instances where you need to be on site sometimes and you can work remotely other times, that some teams have to have different policies. But how do those get set? Who's in charge of that? How, as an employee, do you ask for that? And then in this unusual situation, what does it look like when we pretty much have to send everyone home? So we've definitely seen some on the fly policy surprises coming out of this is how well company leaders and employees themselves talk about remote work, even in a pandemic. They're still saying this is good. Overall, it's helpful. I enjoy it, even in the worst of circumstances. And so if people can work this way during a pandemic and do it pretty well, then I hope there's hope for when things kind of go back to normal, that remote work will be around for those who want to do it.
You gave some excellent suggestions for going through tutorials to bring people up to speed and upskilling. And I found that when I talk about support from higher ups, also support from coworkers to be some of your best test audiences. When
Yes.
I know that I was fumbling to try to make sure that I knew all the features in a Zoom call, so I wasn't looking like I was looking in a fun house mirror. My colleagues were fantastic and served as an audience for me and then I for them, so that we could practice with each other before we went live for our patrons. You want to bring the best to your patrons or your clients or your customers, and who better to try that on than your coworkers, where you can laugh at your mistakes without feeling terribly foolish.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say, for anybody who's looking for work right now and maybe doesn't have coworkers to ask, friends and family, especially if you have kids at home, they think it's hilarious to teach mom and dad how to use a certain type of technology or whatever it might be. So, relying on friends, family, kids, neighbors, whoever might be around to help you, I highly recommend that, because it gives you, like you said, that environment that's low pressure. You can laugh about it, and you're not sweating, just thinking, oh my goodness, they're gonna think that I don't know what I'm doing because I don't know what I'm doing yet. You can actually test it out and get to know what you're doing before you have to see.
Brie, I think your internet connection is slightly sketchy. Just your audio.
You now.
Are you back? I'm
Let's see.
also
Anybody
I'm in
in the
YouTube and I'm
chat?
reading. Someone mentioned I just found an office background
Oh,
noise generator. It has the sounds of the e-office, like the copier, background conversations,
okay.
etc.
Let's see. I am.
Okay.
Hear me?
You know, it's slightly sketchy. I think it was like a slow motion. But
Oh, okay.
we're gonna wait it out and just so I'm going to take a few moments and put on some links into the chat for those that may have not been able to attend the first two sessions on the 3rd and the 10th. Those are available on the YouTube channel. Also, you're welcome to get in touch with me. I put my email address on both YouTube and Zoom. If you want a copy of the handouts, I'd be happy to share them with you. Tonight's presentation will remain on YouTube, and we have another session coming up on the 20th, which is just this Thursday, and it is called Shift Gears. We're going to welcome Carla Miller, a columnist from the Washington Post, and she will be our fourth presenter. So, right, okay, Brie, you're back with
I
audio and everything?
am. Does it sound
Okay.
better? Is it okay?
Oh,
Sorry
much
about
better.
this. Oh
No,
boy.
much better. It's we never know what's going to happen, which is
Yes,
why, you know, it's always better, I found, to team, just to have one person be able to stay on, because I know
absolutely.
I've had to text my my department director in a crunch because I was bumped out,
Oh, geez.
and
Yeah.
no one wants to be bumped out of their own session, you know. And I'm
No.
like, can you just please hold my place till I find my way back in, you know?
Yes,
And
exactly. Yeah. And troubleshooting, it's all about troubleshooting. It's so funny. Sometimes it works perfectly, and then sometimes we have some glitches, but I'm glad most of it went pretty well.
I do want to make mention of, before I put the links onto the chat, when we talk about structure, I think I kind of compare it to Goldilocks. You know, could be too soft, could be too hard, right? We could be understructured and a little too loose and cozy. We could be overstructured and work, you know, 9 solid hours without a break just to prove that you're cranking out quality work. I had to find my own right level, like the Goldilocks level of you know, what my structure, what my the outlay of my days will be. I have to be flexible for what the needs are, but also my own discipline. And with that comes some practical tips, which is to kind of dress for the part so much. I mean, we could be slightly more relaxed, but I also, you know, I have the comfy clothes like everybody else, but I can't come in with my overalls and you know, and with pigtails. I was doing that in the beginning, but only like in my internal circles. But if we are going to try to give, you know, our brand, our professional level of ourselves, it has to be, I think, natural, but it also has to be, you know, slightly polished one up. And I've had a couple of patrons contact me just to take a look at what they were going to wear for an interview, on a remote interview, and what their background setting looked like. You
Yes.
know, and just 5 minutes to connect with the librarian to say, does this look appropriate? Do
I
my
love
colors
that you
look
do
okay?
that
Does
too.
my light, does I, you know, and this is where, as my job, I never thought that was going to be part of it, but it's anything to help ready our patrons for what they're working on and what they're going to do. Is my lighting okay? Is my sound fine? You know, and it
Yes.
really does help them um, you know, get ready for something that they might be very nervous about.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And I love that you included both whatever they're planning to wear and the lighting and also what's behind them too, because I think you can dress really well and your lighting can be great. But if behind you is very distracting, that's what people are going to be looking at. If there's a big bookshelf with piles of different things, all going in different directions, people are just going to be kind of checking that sort of thing out. It's anything that can be distracting is unfortunately not a good thing in a remote environment. So even if you have just something behind you that's clean, I'm working from the office right now, or the attic, excuse me. I turned the attic into a little home office because my husband started working from home also. So he took the office space and I was like, oh, I can be flexible. But I just got some stick on wallpaper for behind me because otherwise it's very old, peeling, stained wallpaper that we don't pay any attention to because it's usually a storage room. But just that small, I think it was like $25 at Target or something like that. Little things like that, if you're going to be on video a lot, can make a huge difference just to have people focus on you and the message that you're delivering or whatever you're trying to say versus whatever's going on behind you.
A couple more comments while we still have some time.
Mm-hmm.
One of our attendees had said to you, this was the best remote working seminar I've attended.
Oh, goodness. Thank you.
We also have mention for another source, and it is a wonderful source that the library's partnered with for many, many years, called WorkNet. In our area, it's called WorkNet. It's also been renamed the North Suburban Cook County American Job Center. If
Oh,
anyone
sure.
wants more
Yes.
information on that, please let me know. We're really fortunate. We have one in our proximity at 723 Algonquin Road in Rolling Meadows. We would normally have ongoing monthly sessions with that organization for full day power employment workshops. Unfortunately, we can't host those meetings in the library, but that is an organization that has been just a huge proven help to the community and is still receiving visitors. We just can't host any meetings inside of our library, but I'm still in touch with them and all of the programs that they continue to offer. Let's take a look.
Yeah, those
See
are great. The
here.
community career support centers are invaluable most of the time.
I am going to put out those postings like I had mentioned. I just need a moment to do it. So sorry. Okay, so here we go. That was our first one. Put this. Huh. There we go. Okay, so Lauren Milligan did our first session, which was update your resume for the 2020 job search. And that is the link of where you will find that on YouTube. And then she did another one the following week called Beyond the Resume. And here is that link.
Oh, and actually, Patty, I just noticed that the link is going to all panelists instead of panelists and
Oh,
attendees. That's
okay.
why.
All right, I'm just sending it to you, which you may be interested, but yes,
I was going to say, I
no.
would love to watch Lauren. It sounds
Here we go.
great.
All right, so there, I sent the second one first. And let me get the next one here. And then I'm going to put them out on YouTube also. That is not letting me do. Well, you know what I'm finding on Zoom is that copy and paste does not work quite so nice.
It's a little finicky. Yeah. Yep.
It's I think it's really private. It won't let you copy someone else's, and it won't let you edit what you copy and pasted.
Yes.
But
It's one of the main frustrations I have in using Zoom a lot is that happens.
so bear with me, everybody. Okay, I think you should have it. So I just posted to all panelists and attendees beyond the resume, that link, and update your resume for the job search, that link as
I
well.
can
And
see
I'm going
them
to,
both for all
can
panelists
you?
and
Okay,
attendees.
thank
Yeah.
you. See, this is what I need. I need test audiences.
Teaming. Yep.
Okay. And you have all of your helpful links that were sent out in the handouts, which I sent to all registered attendees earlier today.
Awesome. Yep.
Let me just go with that.
I'll share my screen again with that, the slide of all the different lists of potential job. From current slide. There we go. List of job search websites in case anybody's interested. And again, you can just Google these and they'll come up really easily. And the reason I picked these is because they're updated very regularly, like at least once a year, if not more than that. So the sites that are featured are current. You're not going to hopefully click on any links that will bring you to a defunct website.
So I really do, out of all the slides that I had the benefit of looking at before your session, I wanted to mention what I particularly liked was the template. And I know that, that's adjusted for whatever your organization expects, but just those are the highlights. But I like just the straightforwardness and how it was laid out. This is what's currently going on. These are the projects I'm working on. And how did you phrase it? This is what I nailed, these were the successes, what I nailed.
Progress and
that
wins.
One, yes, that one. Yeah, progress and wins. I like progress and wins, as opposed to bumps in the road. But
Yes.
and I think that that's really important, because as much as we are accountable to, as direct reports, to our managers, they are also accountable to their managers, and you don't want to leave your manager without the answers of what is your direct report working on from home.
Yes, exactly. And I will say, if there's something specific that you need them to respond about, you have a question about something, you should be very clear about that, or even have that in a separate email so that they can really act on that one thing. This is really for if you want to just have them be updated, but they don't need to act on anything in the update. This is kind of the best way to do it. But if you need action from them, I think a separate email, or if you have a meeting with them, that can maybe spur things to move a little faster.
Well, I think I'm not seeing any more questions that are coming up here. So I'm going to wind up with a tremendous amount of appreciation for FlexJobs and for Brie. Brie, how I came to find you was through the media. It was just through the readings. You were on, Good Morning America. You were on, NPR. I read an article, and I just, with the Grow with Google, I took a gamble and just reached out to FlexJobs. And I can't even tell you how pleased I was that the turnaround time that I heard back from your organization was within a day. And I just expressed interest. We're a library. We think what you do is very, very cool. It would be really helpful. Can you come and talk to us? And one of your representatives, on staff gave us a call, and then I met with you. So it was a lovely segue. And, I feel really pleased because it ultimately was able to bring this content to our patrons, who I think deserve the very best. And you really were the very best to talk about this topic.
Oh, well, thank you. And the mutual admiration society is definitely here. The feeling is very mutual. We're always so happy to do this sort of thing at FlexJobs. And it shows you the current state of the world that I was on Good Morning America talking about remote work, because that's not typical in my line of work. I will say that, but I'm happy to do whatever I can to help people learn more about this and just get the word out about how to do this well, because I really believe in it. It's been very helpful for me to work remotely for as long as I have. Even in the best of times and not great times in the middle of a pandemic, I think it's really a wonderful option for people if they can find it. So I'm always happy to be talking about how to do that, how to do it well, and hopefully, have people walk away with something that they're going to try tomorrow, have a little inspiration, a little spring in their step. And it's been an absolute pleasure partnering with you too. So it's nice to have remote options to actually meet new people and expand your network, for lack of a better word. So thank you.
Well, please take care. Everyone, enjoy the last weeks of the summer. And also, if you're available, please either register or tune in to us on Thursday night at 6:30 for our fourth and final session of the series that was brought to you by Grow with Google. And it will be called Shift Gears. It'll be with Carla Miller with the Washington Post. Brie Reynolds and FlexJob, thanks you so much.
Thank you very
Take
much,
care,
and
everyone.
take care, everybody.